We're doing an interview for Gusto Gamers here with Wilko. You had a decent run, I guess, in your group.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Kinda. You lost 0-2 against Indy and
0-2 against Dice.
and Dice. Were they close games, in your opinion?
No.
How close they were? No?
It was actually a total rape. Like, I got 2 wrecks by Dice and 4 gated by Indy.
Two games in a row?
Not 2 games in a row, but
Still.
and the other game was like, I tried Blink Up server on Antigua versus Dice, and he managed to sneak in SCV and then saw and scouted the row on the Twilight. So he had already bunkers in place, defended it. I tried to do a Colossus follow-up, but it didn't work, so I lost.
Besides you in the group were Kato, German as well.
Yeah.
But he didn't come. Do you know what happened actually to him?
Yeah, he has like a not so well-known team, and he told me that well, he's not sure if like he would pay the hotel and the travel expenses himself, and the team said they will pay him back, but he was not so sure about it if they actually would pay him, so he decided to not come.
Not come. Besides Kato, how do you feel? Because I don't really consider you being the weakest in the group, and I don't really think that you should have lost against India at least. Although he's a good player, but
I think if Kaito would have come, I would have beaten him. But like Dice is already a good player, like really good. So I thought against Dice I will lose, and against India I might have a chance because it's also PvP, and PvP is everything is possible. But he played really good, and after the game I talked to him, and he actually told me that he's playing full time now.
Yeah.
So he already improved a lot, and I think we can see a lot of him in the future because he's playing full time now.
I heard from many Polish players that Dicer is actually a noob, and he's very lucky. Do you think like if you wouldn't, for example, scout your play in one of those games, would be a tie, and then eventually could you follow up with a 2-1 victory?
Maybe, but he is still a very good player. But like it was my mistake to let the SCV come in. He came from a funny angle, so I didn't catch it with my stalk in time. And well, I think he is actually a very good player. Like he doesn't do cheesy stuff. He's always playing standard.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time to get good at this very standard style. So I actually think he's a very good player. He won't be a favorite to win the tournament here, but he's very good.
In general, considering every single player beside yourself, how do you rate players who participate in the tournament? Besides the obvious big names that people think are going to take the whole event on their own, like Nurture, right, or Red. But besides those big names, are there any players that exceeded your expectations to some point, or you thought are worse, but actually made it to group stage 2, or I don't know, you played against them on ladder and they did something completely different than you would expect them to?
Well, there's a lot of Polish players here. I didn't watch all the games, but some of them, and like for example, one of the Polish player, User, he actually qualified for the next group stage, and on ladder he always lost to me, so I'm quite surprised that he made it. But he played against Mattes, the coach, and another good Zerg from France, and he actually advanced, so that was quite surprising. And other than that, it's like not surprising results. Like the better players are always going through at the moment.
In that Axon game, actually, I don't know if you knew, like he did that fast lane attack, and Axon for the first time. I've talked to Toto because Axon didn't really want to talk about it, but Toto told me that like every single game in the tournament, for example, Axon did 4 queens in every single matchup in the ZVZ. He always had 4 queens. But then against User, he had only 2 for whatever reason, and then he lost that in that tiebreaker actually. Now, coming here, obviously, because I think that if you participate in this tournament, I don't know if you agree with me or not on this one, but whenever you participate in a big tournament, you're like motivated to win. Like you want to win, you know, or at least you hope that you can do well. But what, in your case, was it, for example, stress or a bit of? Do you feel like you were unprepared or didn't have enough practice before to be able to, for example, as you said, not to be crushed, but for example, take those games at least to 1 or even win?
Well, like I felt very comfortable here because it's like the house where I train anyways. So everything, like if you go to an event, the surroundings are always a factor. But for me, everything was perfect because I'm living here. And I also trained a lot before the tournament, but I had like a 1 year inactivity before, and I'm still not at the level to compete with the pro players. But if I stay here in the Ministry of Wind for 1 or 2 more months, I think I can reach that level. But at the moment, it's just hard practice on my road, and maybe after that I will achieve something. We will see.
This is very funny. I don't know why, but for example, a Ministry of Wind coach he barely managed to qualify, which was kind of unexpected. And but still, that was obviously a joke. Man, this won't kill me later. But is it really that Ministry of Wind as a facility for professional gamers, as they call themselves, is really that place to be? For example, for you at this point in your career, that will improve your game enough to actually participate in much bigger events later in the future, or even now?
Yeah, I think so, because I already, like when I came here, I was like mid-master, and I improved a lot in a short amount of time. Like I'm high master now, and I always get like even like mid grandmaster on ladder now, so it helps me a lot. And also the players who were here before, like Cytoplasm and Snoot, they were like very good players, but not on top level. But after they stayed here for 1 month, they qualified for MLG, they qualified for IPL, and they improved a lot. So I think it's like the best place to improve yourself very fast here at the Ministry of Wind.
But would you say, I don't know, obviously we don't really have much information on that, Korean-wise, talking about Korean pro houses, would you say that having all those schedules and, you know, well-designed, I don't know, practice, besides being coached by Mattis, I don't know if he's being a good coach anyway, but besides that, do you feel like, for example, playing custom games against your the players, the people who stay here, is also part of improving your skill and your abilities as a player?
Yes, it helps a lot because you can like simulate a certain situation many times in custom games, and then you can actually go to the other player's place and he can show you what you can do better. Like of course you can do it online too, but like it's much easier to explain person to person those mistakes. And we have also a very good schedule. Like in the morning when there are not so good players on ladder, we actually do custom games and we train more intensively, and then in the afternoon we do ladders because all the other good players ladder too in that time. And in the evening we all play cups and try to win some small money.
And what about Poland in general? I've asked many people this question before, and probably you will be asked that many times in the future as well. But how do you find Poland as a place for you to practice? Would you even think before Ministry of Wind became, you know, this place here in Warsaw, would you even consider Poland as being a good place to practice or to expand further into your StarCraft 2 career?
Well, the good thing about Poland is that like the living expenses are pretty cheap. Like the food is cheap, and also the house, because in Poland there's very cheap rent compared to Western countries. So it's like the best place to start a business like here. And I would like to stay here if I manage to get better and sustain myself with StarCraft 2. I would like to stay here for a long time.
And this is again a question, the opposite one actually. Is there something that you feel like Ministry of Wind should kind of improve to be even better at what they try to achieve right now? Is there something that you miss as a player?
Well, like many good players are coming here, and we doing actually a lot of awesome stuff, like the Battle of Ministry of Wind at the moment, 5,000k tournament. But like one of the problems is that we don't advertise ourselves good enough. Like we have those awesome projects, but we don't have anyone who makes like advertisement on the sides, and so it's actually big, but it doesn't seem so big to the community, and we have definitely to improve at that point. But I think we can do it in future.
We know that Destiny is coming here,
Yes.
being one of the most, I don't know, let's call him an eccentric player or eccentric streamer. Sorry. He's one of those guys that actually are playing, for example, in a Grandmaster, but aren't really considered being that good of a player. However, they're awesome streamers, for example. Do you feel like Destiny and you guys in general, can you somehow cope and get something out of each other, even though, for example, the skill level is kind of different and the approach towards the game is different, like mentality, the motivation to play StarCraft 2? Do you feel like this is like you have 12 people in a house in the middle of September, pretty much. In 2 weeks' time, you'll have a full house.
Yes.
Do you feel like this environment in general, and because every player, each one of you is completely different, you and Breed and Sage obviously and Destiny, these are like completely different zones, and being kind of a personality like Destiny or being the more quiet one like Breed, for example. Does it zone well? Does it like go together and make something better in general for you?
Yeah, I think it goes well together because like we like how to call it? Well, we get something from them and they get something from us. For example, we got Destiny and also Destro.
Yeah.
And like the thing what they have is they have a big fanship and viewership, and like they bring a lot of viewers for us, and then the good players who are not so well known and not so emotional like Destro or Destiny, they get actually more viewers from them. So it's easier to sustain themselves with advertisement on streams, and in exchange they can learn from us like how to improve in their game. So I think both sides have advantages of this, and it's good that we have both kind of players, like the entertainment players and also the players who want to improve. But I think even if Destiny and Destro are like more for the entertainment, they still have like a competitive soul and they want to become better. So I think it will go well hand in hand.
And because the tournament's about to end tomorrow, we're still about to start second group stage at this point. Who's the main favorite in your opinion? What's the top 3 or top 4 for this event?
I think there are three favorites, and maybe another player who can do well, like Sage the Korean. I think he's a favorite. Nurture, of course. He won the last Home Story Cup, which is pretty similar to this cup.
Yeah.
And also Snoot, like I lived with him in the Ministry of Wind for 1 month already, and I saw him improving, and he went into Korea for 1 month and he is really good. So I think it will be between Nurture, Sage and Snoot, but also like I think Red is not at their level but very close, so he could be a surprise too. And other than that, I think, well, Dicer and Tarson are pretty good, but they are like too far behind of the other players. So I think those 4 are like the players who can win the tournament.
When Battle at Ministry of Wind Get Outplayed is done, you're going back to your regular practice schedule, obviously. What are your goals for the nearest future, or for example the beginning of 2013? Are there any big tournaments that you would like to participate, qualify and do well in?
For now I just want to practice and improve myself, and I don't know how long it will take to improve. Like I don't have really talent for RTS games, so I need a lot of practice to improve, but I can do that here, so it's fine. And I don't know, for the first part I will just improve and then maybe find a team, and starting in winter 2012 or maybe early 2013 I would like to go to events and see how far I can get there, but for now it's just hard practice.
You said that sorry, but you said that you have no talent in RTS games.
Yes.
So how on earth do you improve if you don't see yourself as a talented person enough to play RTS?
Yeah.
Then what drives you to be even better at this game? Motivation or?
Yeah, it's just the competition. I want to be better than the others, and like, for example, if you look at Nurture, he doesn't play much,
Yeah.
and he's still very good. So he's kind of a genius, but like I believe myself that if I just train harder, at some point I will catch up because talent gives
Gives you an edge.
yeah, but it only leads to a certain point, and at some point it stops, and that from that point on it's only hard work. So I need to reach that point too, which will take me longer because I'm not so talented. But I think if I train, because at the moment I'm training like 14 to 16 hours a day.
Yeah, you're pretty much like Sage, but you're not streaming that much, are you?
Well, lately I didn't stream so much, but now I'm starting. And I also tried to commentate some games because I saw that there are more viewers
Yeah, when you
coming in.
come.
Yeah, and like for 1 or 2 weeks I'm already streaming from morning to night. And I'm actually like one of, like Sage and me are the two players who stay longest to train. And it's also good that he sits next to me. It gives me a lot of motivation, and
Yeah.
I can also learn much from him.
Because you can't be worse than Sage. I mean,
Yeah.
you're sitting next to him. You can't just go like 5 hours of practice
Yeah.
a day. You have to go 15, 16
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah, when I'm exhausted, I just look to the right and I see, okay, Sage is playing, I have to train more. And I think maybe he's probably thinking the same. And so we keep pushing each other until the night, until like maybe 2 or 3 a.m. And then we finally go to bed.
Yeah, but talking about our friend Sage here, he's coming from different background. He's like, do you feel that Koreans, in terms of practicing, have like, I don't know how to put it exactly, but do you feel like they know that they have to train hard because they were taught this way because of culture, or just because they're Koreans and Koreans in general are considered being beastly in StarCraft 2? Do you feel like this is it a difference like between foreigner approach and the Korean approach towards training and practice?
I think it has something to do with the culture, because like in the Asian countries, especially Japan and Korea, like you get acknowledged in society if you work hard. So everyone tries to work hard to get acknowledged. But like for example, for the training of StarCraft 2, I always thought they are training much. But I was actually talking to Sage, and he told me that they don't have a schedule like most of the teams.
Yeah.
And they play League of Legends all the time. So I don't know how they get so good, even though they have like a lot of free time playing other games. Yeah, but I think because the Casper players are switching over and they are already beating most of the GSL players, I think like in half a year or something they will completely take over.
Have you watched the last OSL games?
Yeah, I watched
16?
the OSL and WCS, and I saw players like Dongrigu, Nesty, and all the GSL players and even champions lost to the Casper players. So I'm pretty surprised that they are so good already, and I think we can expect like a lot in the future from them.
I wasn't kind of expecting this to happen, but that Flash game when he did like multi-drops against that Zerg, that was kind of a I wasn't expecting Casper players to actually catch up that fast, and Flash was playing for like it wasn't Flash, it was
Fantasy. I think.
Fantasy, yeah.
He played versus Nessie on Entombed.
Yeah, that was crazy. I wasn't expecting any Terran, especially Brood War Terran, to catch up so fast and to understand how Medivacs drops work, that you can actually heal your units, and that was impressive. But
I'm actually surprised that it was actually Fantasy, because he was one of the players who trained the least amount of StarCraft 2.
yeah,
Because he went to the OSL finals, so he had to play Brood War all the time, and also Jungbi. Like those two players who actually played more Brood War than StarCraft 2 in that time.
still managed to catch up.
Like they are already the best players in StarCraft 2 too from Casper. So.
But wasn't that because, for example, I know that Fantasy, like from what I recall, he's like been already 2-time champion of ASL. He's like since 2010, I believe, he's been like constantly on top of Korean Brood War scene.
Yes.
So, wasn't that kind of a natural switch for him?
Yeah, I think so too. Same for Jangbi. He won the 2 recent OSLs.
Yeah.
And he's also the ace player for Samsung Khan in the Pro League for StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they are just on a roll right now and they take it over to StarCraft 2, and that's good to see that.
Talking about Korean, because apparently you're one of those players who watch some of those streams and games. Have you watched, for example, the top 8, the quarterfinals, for example, of the WCS Korea?
Yes.
With Roro's play?
Yeah, I saw that too. Like when we are practicing in the morning, there's normally OSL or GSL or WCS going on, and we have like this big screen in our training room. So while we are training, we can always follow the matches, and if there's like something interesting, we can always look up the VDs later.
Yeah.
And yeah, I saw that games. Like Roro impressed me a lot, and I'm kind of sad that he didn't got Code S.
Yeah, same here. But I wasn't really sure what he's gonna, because when he was on his group stage and then came into the bracket, I was like, okay, he's doing pretty well. But then when he started being like all those big names, I was so impressed. I thought for longer than a few seconds that he can actually take WCS Korea and become like that Caspa player who beat all those GSL champions and then came on top of the whole StarCraft internationals.
Yes.
For the last question, I just want to ask you, do you feel like, still talking about Korea and foreign scene, do we need those Caspa players to become, for example, Bonjuas in StarCraft 2 to continue the legacy of the Korean all-time champions taking everything and beating everyone on the planet? Or would you consider that because StarCraft 2 became not really the Korean only game, but we have all those foreigners who can actually compete with many top Korean players? Do you feel that we still need to approach the more global perspective on StarCraft, or should it become again a Korean game actually?
Yeah, I would like to see to be it global, but like if you compare the top European players and the top Koreans, they can actually compete. But the problem is that there are a lot more top Korean players than top European players.
That's true.
So if you look at the tournaments, like it's always a Korean winning. The only exception was Nurture in Home Story Cup.
Sorry.
And I think when the Casper players are coming, then it's again shifting more to the Korean side of winning tournaments.
Thanks very much for the interview. Thanks for your time. Good luck with Ministry of Wind practice, and I hope to see you in the future in those big tournaments that you think, you can play.
Yeah,
for sure.
we will see. Thank you very much for the interview too.
Thanks.